because this could be a sweep. But let's get more insight from former athletic writer and now with WMAR TV and sportsnaut.com, sportsnaut.com, kind of like astronaut. It's the great Dan Connelly who covers the Orioles on a daily basis at Dan Connelly 2016. Dan, how are you? And are you enjoying the series?
Good, guys. And it's certainly an interesting series. Maybe not the one that Orioles fans were expecting, but it's definitely a good one.
Okay, so I also just want to say this right off the jump because I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while. This is your first time here with us on FT Live. Your article about John Angelos during the season was incredible. One of the best articles I read all year to give like a really comprehensive look at how the franchise runs. We'll get to that later. Let's do the glass half full fun stuff first because it's been a great year for Baltimore. So tell me your thoughts and expectations heading into Texas. I mean, obviously they were super excited for ball in Baltimore. They went through Tank City, super tank team to get to this point. Very excited about how well they did in the American League, and then the Rangers take it to them in the first two games. You think they still have a chance?
It's tough, guys. I mean, down 2-0 and going to Texas. And Texas, they haven't had a playoff game in a while as far as at home is concerned. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be loud. And this is a team, an Orioles team, won 101 games. It's the first time they've done that since 1980. And they expected to win one, if not two, at home. And so to go 0-2 into Texas is not where they expected. The good thing about this team is it is so young. It is so confident. It may not realize how daunting this situation is. And they might actually be able to overcome it because they've overcome everything this year. This team has not been swept since May of 2022 before Adley Rutschman even took this, even joined this team. So do they have a chance? Yes. Is it going to be the most difficult, daunting chance so far that they've had this year, since the rebuild? Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. So the Orioles coming into the year, nobody expected this out of them, how good they were going to be, win the division, everything else. Will this be, say they get swept or say they even lose the division? This going to be a season like, we should have done better. It's a season to forget, or is it going to be like, all right, man, look at what we did right now. Let's look to the future.
I think this has to be a season to build on because, like you said, they weren't supposed to be this good, first of all. They won 83 games. They went from 52 wins to 83 wins, 21 and 22. That's a huge jump. No one expected another 20 win or so jump here. So I think that they have to feel like this was a success regardless. You never want to lose. You never want to get swept. But I think they feel like this is something they can build on because of the youth they have. A 22-year-old Gunnar Henderson, a 23-year-old Grayson Rodriguez, a 25-year-old Adley Rutschman. Even their veterans like Hayes and Mullins and Santander are all in their mid to late 20s. So I do feel like this is a building on team. Adam Jones had said previously that this team reminds him of the 2014 Kansas City Royals, which took out the Orioles in 2014. And then in 2015, they won the World Series. I think that's what the Orioles have to look at, that this was a year that they told everybody that they're here. And now it's going to be a year next year and beyond that they really do fight for a World Series.
So do they really want to build on this team? Because that takes money. And that takes someone else stepping up and being like, oh, yeah, we do want to build on this team. And we want to keep these guys together. We don't want – you possibly could have a 2-year window here with this team. And I know I'm being – I'm on the lower end. Everyone's thinking, well, Gunnar Henderson's a rookie. He's going to be here for 6 years. They probably trade him if they're not willing to spend money on somebody.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if they'll spend money. They haven't spent money. And I don't think that they're really into spending money at this point. Sort of like, they look at Tampa Bay and Cleveland as teams that they emulate themselves after. That said, this is the best farm system in baseball right now. And they have so many guys that other teams would covet. And so if they want to go get a starting pitcher, for instance, they may have to do it through trade and not through a free agency. Are they willing to give up some of their young studs? Probably, especially if you look at the middle infield and they have 5 or 6 or 7 guys who really are considered young up and coming players. They have a guy, Joey Ortiz, who can't crack the lineup. They have guys like that. They can package a couple of those for a team that wants to get rid of a starting pitcher. So they may not have to obtain that number 1 or number 2 guy via free agency. They may be able to get him, through trade and then pay that guy what his salary is. I think they're willing to do that. I'm not sure they're willing to spend, 5 years and $100 and some million on a pitcher.
So you're saying they wanted to emulate who again? What were the two teams?
Well, Cleveland and Tampa were two of the teams that they have talked about. And, you want them to emulate Houston.
Yeah, Houston has 2 World Series, and right. Houston's locked up Altuve. Houston has gone out and maybe overspent on an Abreu. Houston has gone out and gotten Verlander. Like, if you want to emulate 2 teams that have 0 championships, but the Rays got to the World Series. So do the Orioles really want to win a World Series? I'm not talking about the players. I'm talking about the organization.
Bregman re-signed, and Tucker probably will re-sign too. So they're keeping dudes.
If you're talking organization and you're talking ownership, I'm not so sure. They don't pay. They don't spend the money, and that's the thing. They haven't, and they don't. Are you talking Mike Elias? Does he want to do that? Absolutely. They are only a player or 2 away from really making major noise here, and they won 101 games. They already made noise. But to get to where you're talking about, to get to the World Series or being a World Series contender and winning a World Series, yeah, they have to add, and they should add financially. I just don't, I've covered this team 23 years. I haven't seen the adding financially at all in that time. It's, it's a little bit of a different ownership. The Sun's in charge now, but I don't see them going that way. I see them trying to do it via their collateral in the minors.
So tell us the mindset then, while we're on this topic, of John Angelos, who, is a daddy money guy. He's the son of Peter, who got the team going. And at one point did spend some money. Remember, like the Miguel Tejada era, where the Orioles were spending some cash on a team that had, franchise players that you could kind of build around and also market, which is a big thing. Like we're seeing from teams like the Braves and the Phillies, like names that we know. You can buy the jersey and know that it's going to be there for a bit. So yeah, give me a little inside info on what's going on through his head and some of the experiences that you've had with one of baseball's friendliest owners. Sarcastic.
Yeah. Let me say, first of all, in correction, they will spend money. They've spent money on hitters over the years, but we're not talking about the $200 million players. $161 million was the most they've ever spent in one player. That was Chris Davis, one of their own free agents, and that was a disaster. So they're not going to, they won't spend $200 and $250 million on a player, especially a pitcher, but really on any player. So they're going to spend money, but they're not going to spend that kind of money. Okay, so let's just say that. They've had payrolls in the top 10 before. They had a number 1 payroll overall in 1997 before. So let's not say they won't, but it's doubtful that they spend for that guy or those 2 guys. That said, John Angelos actually told the New York Times, he doesn't talk to us that much, but he did tell the New York Times that, he feels like this is a team that is more like, and I had said earlier, more like a Cleveland or a Tampa, and they're never going to be that top financial team. He also basically made it sound like they wouldn't necessarily sign those young players to large deals. That really deflated a fan base that wants to see Adley Rutschman and wants to see Gunnar, Henderson on this club for a long period of time. Given that particular statement, then yeah, I don't think you're going to see a lot of money spent. And John Angelos is a strange bird. He wants to build around the stadium. He wants to have a Battery-esque, area, like an entertainment area similar to the Battery in Atlanta. He wants to build it as a destination place in Baltimore. He's very civic-minded to Baltimore, as his father was. And, he wants to build around the Orioles brand. Now, does that mean they should win? Yeah, because that's how you build around a brand. But I'm concerned that he's more worried about that part of it than he is what actually is on the field. He went out and got Mike Elias. He went out and got Brandon Hyde. Those 2 guys have been a great combo. But, you got to have the players too. And that's the one concern here is, will they keep their players and will they add to it? And with John Angelos, it doesn't sound like he is saying yes to those questions, at least right now.
You don't have to dive deep into this, but do you think the Chris Davis deal had something to do with this?
It did initially. It did during his father's reign, Peter Angelos' reign. He wasn't spending that kind of money after that. They did that in 15, and then they ended up. It was a terrible deal, and they ended up not spending money from that point on. I think that's changed a little bit. I think they will spend, a $150 million deal, maybe for the right guy at some point. But yes, it absolutely handcuffed this team from, say, 2017 on. Manny Machado was a guy they would have loved to sign, but there was no way they were spending that kind of money after they, put that money into the Davis thing, and it completely collapsed.
Have you seen anything in the clubhouse or heard anything from the players? Because when we had Adam Frazier on, we mentioned the comment that John Angelos said about how, it's going to be tough to re-sign some of these young guys. And Adam Frazier's exact words were, "Oh, we heard that loud and clear." So have you heard anything from the players in the clubhouse?
The thing is that a lot of these guys, and Adam's a veteran, he's one of the few veterans there, right? A lot of these guys aren't really thinking beyond because they're in their first and second year. They're not even at arbitration yet. But does that resonate when you think that you want to keep this group together? This is as close of a group that I've ever been around. The 2014, that 2020, the 2012 to 2016 team with Adam Jones and Nick Markakis and JJ Hardy and those guys was exceptionally close. This team is the same way. They've all kind of grown up together. They really like each other. They want to stay and win championships in Baltimore. The Orioles fans are nuts right now. And, they want to be able to keep that together. So does that resonate in the clubhouse? Absolutely. But I think that these guys are going to take their time a little bit as well to worry about that stuff because they're so far away from free agency. They are here for 5 more years or whatever. But for the veteran guys, they see that and think, hey, we're not going to be able to keep this group together, I'm sure.
Dan, let's swing back to the series for a moment. What do you think the Orioles can learn from, say, the Rangers? Obviously, the money can tie right into this because Cal Raleigh said the same thing about Texas, how they've done a nice job building. They went through a little rebuild, but then they also threw down financially. And you're seeing that at the top of their order for sure. And even obviously with some of the pitching that they have. And actually, what's scary is the Rangers could be that much better. They're like, hey, let's get through the DS because Scherzer's coming back and John Gray, which makes them even more of a force.
I was going to say DeGrom, but he won't be back next year.
Not DeGrom yet, but which is crazy. It's like, oh, DeGrom's on IL. But, I mean, the Rangers have spent significant money. It's not always all going to work, but they're in this position for that reason.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at this Texas team, and there are 2 ways to do this. You can just completely shut it down, completely tank, and come back, if you can make that work. Or you can do it partially and then supplement financially. And the Rangers have done that. But then they have a guy like Evan Carter who comes up, a guy that they drafted, and he's been scary for them. I mean, I think he's 5 for 10 with a home run and 2-3 doubles and something. He's been exceptional to the point where the Orioles were actually game planning for him in game 1 and chased their best starter out just to face Evan Carter and the guys behind him. So Texas has done it right. And I think Mike Elias, who, is the Orioles GM, was there in Houston and helped oversee the tanking there. They built through the farm system. They built through international, but they also spent money. And, we're seeing this with Texas. Texas is such a really good combination of that, where the Orioles aren't there yet because they don't have many of those, like, star leaders. They just have a lot of, like, classy, hardworking leaders like the Adam Fraziers and Kyle Gibsons.
Let me ask you this. We got Dean Kramer on the mound tonight. Hyde said he's been good all year. It's a guy that we got to go to. Back against the wall, is this the guy that needs to be out there for them?
Me personally, I probably would have gone Kyle Gibson because he's experienced and he's a guy that's been around it. But Dean Kramer's been a better pitcher for the most part all season than Gibson. He's got a 4.12 ERA. He won 13 games for this team. The 2 clinchers that the Orioles had, the playoff clincher and then the AL East clincher, they were started by Gibson's. They were started by Kramer. So he's got that. He understands what it's like to pitch in a big game. There's also the other side of this too. He is a dual citizen of both the United States and Israel. And he spends a lot of time in Israel since he was a boy. He has a lot of extended family there. Obviously, with the situation, declaration of war in Israel, he's got a lot of things on his mind. The Orioles, Brandon Hyde, the manager, talked to him, made sure he was okay with it. A lot of these players, like I said, very close. They've talked to him, make sure he's doing okay, make sure his family's doing okay. He's got a lot on his mind, but he really wants this ball, and I think he's pitching for something bigger than just the Orioles right now. So I guess he is the guy to go with, and it's going to be interesting because he's never pitched in this kind of situation, but he's pitched for the Israel Team Israel and WBC, and he's pitched for the clinchers, so he does have big game experience as well.
Is the bullpen able to cover? I know they had the off day yesterday. Let's say this goes just a little bit south early, not something that maybe Kramer can get out of, but it's like bullpen elimination game. Is there enough in this bullpen to cover the rest of the innings, or is it kind of like we need at least 3 out of Dean?
I think you need at least 3 out of Dean. I mean, this is a bullpen who has been very good most of the year. They lost their leader and closer, Felix Bautista. They've had to be able to deal with that. They did get that 5 days rest, but most of these guys have been pitching for 6 months and have never pitched this long, and certainly in this kind of baseball. They took out their best pitcher in 4 1/3 on Monday. On Saturday in Kyle Bradish. And so the bullpen had to fill those 5 innings. Then they had to fill pretty much the entire game on Sunday when Grayson Rodriguez went out early. So they need to be able to mix it up. Now, Brandon Hyde said that it is a all hands on deck situation, and that includes maybe even Kyle Gibson to be behind Kramer if needed. I think they're going to if Kramer can pitch, and keep it scoreless for a while, he'll go as long as they can. But I think they're going to be mixing and matching a lot here, simply because backs against the wall, and they have to win this game. And they don't want a 101 game season to end with 3 straight losses in the playoffs.
What do you think happened to Grayson Rodriguez that made his start really a failure in his mind? I know he's a guy that's actually got a lot of confidence. I know he struggled at the beginning of the year, went back down, came up firing. He's got stuff for days. It is number 1 elite stuff, and he knows it. It's just that the Rangers figured him out pretty quickly after the first or second inning there.
Well, he walked 4 guys and in 2 innings, and that's the big thing there. He got out of a base loaded jam in the first, but then the Rangers can really hit. We can't dismiss that either. I mean, they're a really, really good offensive team. They can be both aggressive and wait out pitchers, and that's kind of what they did a little bit. They seized on a couple 0-1 or 1-0 pitches and got some hits, and then they also waited him out when he wasn't hitting his spots. And so he kind of created his own problem. But this Texas Rangers offense, guys, is really, really good all the way down. You throw Evan Carter in that 5th spot the way he's been hitting, and my goodness, is it deep.
Okay, last one from me. We look back at the trade deadline, and they picked up Jack Flaherty. Obviously, Jack has not been the prime Jack Flaherty that we saw from several years ago. He's gone through shoulder issues, and just, the stuff's not what it used to be, at least for now. Hopefully he gets back to that at some point. They didn't get a ton of attention, but I felt like there should have been more. This was their time to strike. They were in line to be in a position like this. What did you want to see? I mean, obviously it's easier to look back now, but what did you want to see when you looked back then? Were you critical? And, was there anything else you were hearing about? It's easy to look across and go, Jordan Montgomery would look pretty damn good in an Orioles uniform right now. Could have had him.
This is going to sound retrospect, but that was the guy that I was targeting for them. I thought Jordan Montgomery, as a left-hander, as a guy who pitched in the American League East, as a guy who wouldn't cost you that much. He wasn't Max Scherzer. He wasn't Justin Verlander. I think a guy like that would have been perfect for them. And now it's really easy to say that now, right, guys? But that's the guy that I was targeting for them. They actually had some talks about Verlander. I mean, they were interested in getting a guy, but they didn't want to give up Jackson Holliday, who's number 1 hitting prospect in the game. They didn't want to give up a collection of top players for a rental. And I think they would have loved for like a Corbin Burns or a guy like that to be available, but obviously he had some work to do in Milwaukee. So, yeah, they should have done more. And I think they should have gotten 1 or 2 starters, and I certainly think they should have gotten a little bit more in the bullpen help-wise. They got Fujinami, who is not on the roster here. They did pick up Webb, but again, it was more of a off the waiver wire kind of situation. They should have gone out and been more aggressive for a starting pitcher or 2 and a good solid reliever or 2, and they didn't do that. That was where they needed the help, and that we're seeing this now. Now, at the time, Felix Bautista was their closer, but obviously he got hurt at the end of August, and that's kind of changed the bullpen as well. So I think they should have been more aggressive. I think they should have been worrying about this year and not if they could get somebody for this year and a couple of years down the road. And I think that's what they were focused on, more of an overall big picture guy or a rental that wasn't going to cost them much. And that's what Jack Flaherty was.
We're going to run this clip tomorrow because you're going to answer this like you were on the show tomorrow. The Orioles won the game because – complete the sentence.
Because they pitched well. I mean, that's simply they have to pitch well. They do not have an offense that is the same as the Texas Rangers offense. They have to pitch well. Nate Eovaldi's been really good against their offense as well. I mean, overall, historically, I think he's 8-2 with a low 3 ERA in 16 starts against the Orioles, but not these Orioles. But they have to be able to both pitch well, and then they need to manufacture runs. They're a fast team. They're an aggressive team. They need to get a guy on first, steal second, and come home on a single. They need to do those kinds of things, sacrifice flies. They need to manufacture runs and then keep this Rangers offense at bay. And I'm not sure they can do that, guys.
Well, we'll see what happens. And they're going to have to win 3 in a row. They haven't been swept in light years. So we'll see if that that continues. At Dan Connelly 2016 to follow him on Twitter and see his work on WMAR TV and sportsnot.com. Dan, great to have you on. Appreciate the time, man.
Absolutely. Have me anytime. Appreciate it.
Thank you.